choosing some of the big themes from the Psalms. Bertrand Russell, who was a very famous leading atheist and philosopher of the last century, 20th century, in the UK and Europe, he was once asked what he would say if he found himself ever standing before God and God asked him, "Why didn't you believe in me? Why were you an atheist? Why didn't you believe in me?" Apparently Russell replied, "I would say, not enough evidence, God. Not enough evidence." Well, one day he's going to have to say that. And I believe that the message of the Bible and of this psalm is that Russell was wrong. Bertrand Russell was wrong. It's as if when we read, especially a psalm like this, a psalm of creation, it's as if the psalmist, probably David, says, "What? No evidence? Not enough evidence? Please, open your eyes. Look around you. Look above you. Look within you." And there's abounding evidence for the existence of a great and glorious God, from whom we have all received the gift of life and who has made all things by his supreme power and authority. So, this morning we come to look at this Psalm 8, and two big truths which I think will help us as we seek to be followers of Jesus, to renew or strengthen our faith and to bear witness to that faith in the world that we find ourselves in today. The first thing this psalm points us to is the basic truth, the truth of a wonderful creator. God, a wonderful creator. If you notice, when I read the psalm, it begins and ends with the same statement. A statement of absolute conviction. Verses 1 and 9 repeat the same words. O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. Depending on what version perhaps you're looking at. So the psalm begins and ends with God himself. And the overriding theme is the majestic reality of a great creator God. His majesty, his power can be seen in the world that he's created. You have set your glory above all. You've set your glory in the heavens. Look up and you can see something of the glory. The moon and the stars are the work of your fingers, says the psalmist. God set them all in place. He's the author of the universe. Now, why is this an important, fundamental teaching of the Christian faith? Well, it's obvious, isn't it? We don't need to tell you today that there's a great debate going on, certainly in Western Europe and around the world, about the question of origins of life, of the universe, of our planet Earth, of the human race. And the reason for that is plain, isn't it? Because the question of origins is really a question of where do we come from? Where does the universe come from? Where does life come from? What is life for? Do we have any purpose or meaning or significance? These have immense implications for all of us. And the teaching of this psalm and other key passages in the Bible, such as, of course, Genesis 1 to 2 and 3, they have tremendous implications for all of our lives. So, for example, Genesis teaches us there is a beginning. There is a beginning to our history. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, says Genesis 1:1. So, implication, if there's a beginning, there's going to be an end. The world as we know it is not without end. World without end, as we say. No, it is finite, it's created, it's transient, and one day, in God's time and God's purposes, this world as we know it will come to an end. Another implication, the Bible teaches us that creation owes its being to God. It comes from God. And if that's so, then it belongs to God, and we as part of that creation, we owe our existence to God, and therefore, one day we will be accountable to the God who has made us. Very big implication. And if the universe and our earth and we ourselves all come from God, then, thirdly, we have purpose. We have significance. It gives our existence meaning, and with that meaning, hope. It was John Calvin, the French-Swiss reformer, who said the whole cosmos is the theatre of God's glory. The whole cosmos is the theatre of God's glory, in which the drama of God's majesty and power is constantly presented. I think that's a wonderful picture, isn't it? Or, if you like, put it another way, we can say that the universe that we inhabit, it's like a vast art gallery. Now you can go and visit the art galleries of different European, American, and other countries, packed with masterpieces. Well, the universe that we inhabit, as we look around, is like a vast art gallery, packed full of God's masterpieces. What do I mean? Well, I was reading just this week that in your average, whatever your average forest is, there's probably over 40 different shades of green. So God didn't just make green, He makes different shades of green. He's a God of great creativity and variety. Think of the richness of autumn and fall colours. Yellows, golds, browns. Wonderful masterpieces of our Creator God. Think of the energy of a thunderstorm. Think of the different textures of sea, sand, stones, the beach. You just go there. Think of the amazing vistas, horizons that God has created, the variety of the colours of the ocean. Not just blue, but turquoise and green and so on. No matter where we are on this planet, the evidence for God's beauty, God's creativity, God's wonder, God's glory is plain for us all to see. That's what the psalmist is saying here. Just look up. Look up into the heavens. Look around you. And God's name is excellent in all the earth. I think one of the downsides, perhaps, of living in a city like Athens, with all our artificial street lighting, is that we rarely have the opportunity to look up. Well, we can look up, but to really see the stars in the night sky. I always remember that. That's one of the wonderful things I enjoyed about living in Namibia in southern Africa for quite a few years. Occasionally, especially when the children were older, we would go out into the bush or into the desert just to camp. And in the cool of the evening and the night, you wouldn't need a tent, but just lying on the mattress under the night sky in the darkness, you just look up. And it was amazing, it was thrilling. We would count the shooting stars. You'd see they were going on all the time. God's fireworks. And just that sense of awe and wonder at the sheer scale of what you could see even without a telescope, just looking up into the night sky, the stars. Just like David did, I think, in verse 3 here. He says, "When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have set in place." David, I'm sure, knowing his background, his life as a shepherd and so on, he'd been out in the desert too. He looked up into the night sky, and he'd been overawed by just the galaxy we live in, the Milky Way, with its more than 100 billion stars. And that's just one galaxy, we're told, among millions of other galaxies, just like our own. The figures are mind-boggling, aren't they? We can't get our minds around it because, well, space is infinite and God is infinite. And yet all this mind-blowing vastness, David says to us here in the psalm, is just the work of God's fingers. Isn't that a wonderful image? I just think of it. It's just like you might just flick some dust off your sleeve. And there's the universe in place. The work of God's fingers. The universe is set in motion. Now, of course, I'm aware that all this is in direct contradiction to a lot of prevailing atheistic, evolutionary thought and belief about the questions of origins. And I'm not saying that all Christians agree on all the mechanics of creation. We don't all necessarily agree over the exact interpretation of Genesis 1 to 3. Some Christians want to take it very literally. Other Christians are prepared to accept a certain amount of God's overseeing of the process, maybe a slow evolutionary process. We're not all in agreement, but all Christians will accept the authority of the Bible and the authority of the Lord Jesus on some fundamental issues about origins and creation. And I want to suggest two. There are two foundational truths. First of all, as we've been saying, God, the majestic creator, created the universe as the theologians say, ex nihilo. Ex nihilo, what does that mean? It's Latin. It means out of nothing. God created the universe out of nothing. That's what the writer to the Hebrews in the New Testament said. He put it like this in chapter 11, verse 2. By faith we understand that the universe was made by God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. That's the prerogative of deity. That's what God is all about. That's the power to create out of nothing, to speak worlds of life into existence. That is sometimes called primary creation. And in the Hebrew, in the Old Testament, the Hebrew word used is bara. Primary creation, speaking things out of nothing. There's another word for to make in the Old Testament, and that's used sometimes even of God. But that's a secondary sort of creation. It's used when God formed or made Adam out of the dust of the earth. That is asa. So bara and asa. Now we can asa, we can make, we can create things, we can make a cake. Well, I can't make a cake, but many of you can make a cake. We can make a house, we can build a house. We can make an engine, we can make amazing things. But we cannot bara them, we can't speak them into existence out of nothing. We can't create them from stuff that wasn't there already. We can only asa. Bara can only be done by God. And so as Christians, we don't have to apologize for that basic Christian doctrine of creation. Creation ex nihilo. God making it out of nothing. In fact, I think it highlights some basic problems inherent in atheistic evolution. What do I mean by that? Well, there are some basic questions that the atheist has to answer, aren't there? You see, the first assumption of atheistic evolution is that nothing made everything. But out of nothing, there's what we've got. But things don't happen like that. Things don't come into existence by themselves. Or the second problem, I think, for that view is that random chaos makes or results in order and symmetry. An amazing order and symmetry and pattern in the universe. Or a further development of that view is that no designer made something that is amazingly designed. Well, at no point in our experience of the world do we see something and presume it sprang from nothing. We assume that it was made by someone. And the more complicated it is, the more intelligent we presume the designer to be. So, for example, if you see something made out of Lego, with all the children's building blocks, well, you assume a child made it. Maybe very clever, but it was probably made by a child. If you see a skyscraper, well, you assume an architect designed it. If you see an airplane, an amazing engine, well, you presume an engineer designed it. Things don't come into existence by themselves, and things that are highly complex do not simply come into existence by themselves. I could go on, but I think there's just one more problem really which the atheist has to answer, and it's this. They assume that impersonal matter, which came out of nothing, created personal humanity. You see what I mean? Our existence is more than just matter, it's more than just brain. The brain is a biological organ, but inexplicably somehow we also have a mind. We can think. So how does that which is unintelligent create intelligence? How does that which is non-existent create something existent? How is that which is non-conscious create that which is conscious? How does matter create mind? There's no way to explain it apart from a creator. So as Christians, with the psalmist, we rejoice in this glorious truth of the Creator God, who is the author of life, and can create simply by His word and by His will. That's the first truth that Christians agree on. We might disagree on the mechanics and the time scale and so on, but God is the original creator. We owe our lives to him. And the second, I think, which we all agree on as Christians, is the distinctive creation of mankind. The distinctive creation of mankind, the special creation of humanity, and the wonder of who we are, what we are in God's creation, as portrayed in the story of Adam and Eve in the Old Testament. And that's the second major wonder of the psalm. First, a wonderful creator, and then secondly, a wonderful creation. The truth of a wonderful creation, mankind. The creation itself, matter, is wonderful, but I think the focus of the psalm is more on ourselves, on mankind. That's where the psalm takes us. Listen, having celebrated this majestic creator, for whom the setting in place of the moon and the stars, the vast distances of the galaxies is just a work of his fingers, then he says, David says in verse 4, and what is man, that you are mindful of him? Or the Son of Man, that you care for him? Or in gender neutral, what is mankind, that you are mindful of them? Or humanity, that you care for them? Now you can follow David's thought there, can't you? Because he worships this majestic creator of an immense universe, he inevitably feels his own smallness. That's his natural reaction, and that's the correct question in the light of God's grandeur. The immediate response is, well, who am I? If there's a God who's created all this, what is man? What is mankind that we're mindful of them? In other words, what am I? Who am I? Why am I here? What's my significance? Now, of course, in a universe where there is no God, no creator, no ultimate purpose, then the answer to those questions is quite bleak. It's depressing. The blind universe, ruled by random forces of chance. It's a brutal, it's a terrifying place. Bleak, comfortless, absurd, meaningless. Without God, it's a hopeless, it's a despairing place. Interestingly, when asked whether his view of reality made him depressed, Richard Dawkins, who is probably one of the most famous modern atheists, new atheists, Oxford professor, has written many books. Someone asked him, but doesn't your view as an atheist of the universe meaningless, empty? Isn't it depressing? Dawkins said this, I don't feel depressed about it, but if somebody does, well, that's their problem. The logic is deeply pessimistic, I admit. The universe is bleak, cold, and empty. But so what? Well, so what? Not much of an answer, really. Not much of a hope, not much of comfort. No significance, really. No basis, really, for morality, the way in which we should act towards each other. Now, in such marvelously contrasting words, David answers that question, what am I, who is humanity, in this verse, in verse 5. You made him, he says. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, this moon, the stars which you have set and made, what is mankind that you're mindful of them? Or humanity that you care for them? You have made them. You have made them. God has made us. This majestic God who spoke galaxies into existence also made mankind. He made you. He made me. So we may be small, spatially, we don't take up much space, but we are not insignificant in this vast universe. We are made by God. And although he puts the stars into space, Jesus tells us that he knows even the numbers of the hair on our head. And we are made in his image. We are made with divine dignity. We are made to live in harmony with him and his purposes for his creation. The truth of a wonderful creation, mankind, you and me. God has invested mankind with dignity and destiny. We've got to David says, you have made them a little lower than the heavenly beings, the angels. You've crowned them with glory and honor. You've made them ruler over the works of your hands. You've put everything under their feet, all flocks and herds, all the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, all that swim the paths of the sea. God has made us and given us this amazing mandate. And we have been made by God as the climax, the zenith of his creative genius, with unique significance over all the animal kingdom and the material world, and with unique responsibilities. Uniquely, mankind has been given the responsibility to care for this amazing planet because it's God's creation. And uniquely, mankind has the capacity to wonder, to question, to reflect with self-awareness in this world that God has made. It's unique to mankind. You don't see dogs sitting down watching a drama and reflecting on what is the significance of their life. Or you don't see monkeys. I was going to say you don't see monkeys drawing pictures, but actually yesterday there was a monkey drawing pictures that is somewhat artificially staged, I think, but you certainly don't get museums full of apes or whatever other wonderful animals, but you don't see them reflecting on life and asking the big questions. Why? Because God has made us, humanity, in his image, with that ability, self-awareness. What is man? That you are mindful of him. You see, no other creature can ask that, because no other creature has been made in this way to uniquely share in the purposes of God, crowned with glory and honor, as we live our lives to the glory of the one who is the author of our lives. So, God has made this wonderful world, and he has placed mankind in it as a wonder of his creation. And he's given us all things richly to enjoy. He's a gracious God. He's a God of amazing generosity and variety. So here are just three important implications this morning that, again, we can take from this psalm, from this fundamental Christian belief. First of all, the world is not to be denied. The world creation is not to be denied. A world created by God is not to be denied and repressed. In other words, God likes matter. He invented it. He made it. Matter matters to God. And there's nothing wrong with any of God's wonderful gifts of creation to us. As Christians, we can rightly celebrate and enjoy God's good gifts of life and creation to us, all the good things that he showers upon us that we enjoy as human beings in this world that he's made. Now, unfortunately, there always have been, even within the Christian church, some who have thought and taught that it's more holy to be life-denying, to give up things, to desist from things. Paul had to warn Timothy in the first century about these people in one of his letters. He says this in 1 Timothy 4. These people, he says, they think they're doing the right thing, but they forbid people to marry. They order them to abstain from certain foods, which God created to be received with thanksgiving by those who believe and know the truth. For everything God created is good, and nothing is to be rejected if it is received with thanksgiving, because it's created, because it's consecrated by the word of God and prayer. 1 Timothy 4:2. So as Christians, we can enjoy God's world. We can enjoy the gifts that he's given us. We can enjoy trips to the beach. We can enjoy that wonderful meal, or that lovely wine, or whatever it is. We can enjoy family. We can enjoy sex within marriage. We can enjoy all these gifts of creation because God has made it good, and the world is not to be denied. But secondly, the world is not to be idolized. The world is not to be worshipped. What do I mean? Well, you see, creation, matter, is not divine. When God created the world and nature, he did so as something apart from himself. He's distinct from the world that he has made. So as Christians, we are not pantheists. Pantheists believe that God's spirit exists in everything. in the stones, in the trees, in the sun, and so on. God is everywhere in that sense. He invests everything with his presence, with his spirit. No, we're not pantheists. We don't worship creation. We accept it, we thank God for it because he's created it, but we don't worship it. We don't worship the sun and the moon and the stars and the rivers and so on, or the standing stones or whatever. Now, of course, you might be sitting there thinking, well, in our Western society, of course we don't worship the moon and the stars and the rivers and the trees like they do in some parts of the world in primal religions. Wait a minute. Don't excuse ourselves so quickly. Maybe not. But we certainly idealize materialism, matter in that sense. That's what most of the world, if it's not living for God, is living for. In the Western world, we worship the creature rather than the Creator. We live for the material world. We live for health and for wealth and for pleasure. And we live for it to the extent that often the Creator is forgotten. Worse, is rejected. He's not wanted in that world. Of course, the folly of doing so consists not only in the fact that we'll have to face God's accounting for that, living like that, but such things can never actually satisfy us anyway. Because God has not made us just for material things, we're made in his image. So that even the very best of God's gifts can never satisfy the deepest longings of our immortal souls. We are made for God, and nothing less will ever satisfy. So as Christians, what's our attitude to the material world? Well, we don't deny it, we enjoy it, we receive it with thanksgiving, but we're not preoccupied with it, we don't worship it, we don't idolize it, we keep it in perspective. We worship God. And thirdly, therefore the world is not to be abused. Creation is not to be abused. That's what Genesis, that's what this psalm reminds us. Mankind has been called to be the steward of God's creation. That's what David tells us here. You've made him ruler over the works of your hands. You put everything under his feet, all flocks and birds and beasts of the field and birds of the air and fish of the sea, and everything that swims in the paths of the sea. We are called to be good stewards, looking after God's world. We're to care for this world because it's God's world. It's God's creation. That means that as surely as we know that the God who began this world will also end it, so we must not abdicate in the meantime our responsibilities towards creation care. We care about the world, we care about the cosmos, we care about creation because God has made it, and he's made us to look after it. And so as Christians, it's right that we don't dodge the serious issues of today around climate change or pollution or the irresponsible destruction of our planets, our forests, and so on. We'll be concerned for injustice and the poverty that results from sometimes the exploitation of the world's resources by the rich and the powerful at the expense of others. This world is the theatre of God's glory. All creation exists for God's glory, not for our exploitation, for our abuse. So the world must not be abused. Now, of course, as the rest of Genesis and the whole of the Bible goes on to teach us, as God's stewards in God's world, we haven't done a very good job. Through our selfishness and our sin, we are in the process of destroying God's creation. We've rejected his authority. And we're powerless to put things right. That's why this world is in the state it is this morning, not in the pristine state in which God first made it. That's why we need to see that ultimately this psalm, like so many other psalms, points forward to another figure, to the one who came to this planet and walked this fallen earth in perfect obedience to God, his Father. Jesus. He was the perfect steward of God, the perfect Son of God, about whom the other New Testament writers speak And they do so, and they quote this psalm. You see, the authority and the mandate that God gave us to subdue the earth, to rule it as God's steward, was first given to Adam in that story of the Genesis creation. He received that exalted commission. But Adam failed. Creation fell. It's spoiled by Adam's disobedience. But the New Testament tells us that what the first Adam lost, the second Adam, as Paul calls him, Jesus Christ, has come to rescue, to redeem, to renew. That's why, as I say, New Testament writers, the writer to the Hebrews, reflecting on God, on Jesus coming at God's plan, coming into this world to walk this planet, live that life, to go to death on the cross for our sin and his triumphant resurrection. He quotes this psalm, the writer to the Hebrews, and he says, at the present, we don't see everything made subject to him, that is, to mankind. Things have gone wrong. Our world is out of joint. But, he says, we do see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels, now crowned with glory and honor because he suffered death, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. You see what the writer to the Hebrews is saying? Because of Jesus, this old creation, this wonderful world, still wonderful in many ways, but it's fallen and it's decaying and it's sad. This old creation is going to be renewed through Jesus. And we look forward to a renewal, a cosmic renewal, to that new creation, to a new heaven and a new earth, when the King comes again, where righteousness and peace and justice will reign forever. And that truth that Jesus is King and that he has changed the course of history irrevocably, and that we're looking forward to that renewal one day, that truth, and the truth of this psalm is a reason to sing songs of worship and to wonder afresh in worship about our wonderful Creator God, who in his Son Jesus became our wonderful Redeemer and Rescuer, came in order to recreate us, fallen and sinful though we are, and to recreate the whole universe for his eternal glory. A song of wonder. In the meantime, the fact that we believe that a new day is coming does not excuse us from being faithful disciples of Jesus now in all these different aspects of our Christian living. We're to be his ambassadors, his hands, his feet, his good stewards in the places that he has put us for his glory. Oh, we're going to sing now as we close 2 more songs of worship and of wonder at both the Creator and the Redeemer that we have in Jesus.